built in 1936. The Queen Mary was, at the time of its launch, I believe the largest ocean-going vessel of its kind, and served well. I think maybe it was the North Atlantic where it was especially in service, but served well for many years and finally was retired, I guess you'd say, decommissioned or something. And it found its resting place there in Long Beach, California, where they decided to make it into a museum and a floating hotel, various things. I think a number of stores have gone in there. But when they began to do the renovations to try to make that happen, they had to lift off, I think maybe they lifted off the funnels, I believe is the way it's referred to, but smokestacks. And because they wanted to get the other inner workings of the ship out before they completed the renovation. So as they took those out, they realized that those smokestacks, though they had been painted over, I think there was maybe 30 coats of paint or something on it, but the inner part, the 3/4 inch steel that had made up those smokestacks in the beginning, had rusted out or deteriorated in various ways, so that finally they're being held together basically with those coats of paint. And the reason I want to tell you about that today is that we deal with that in our own personal lives if we're not careful. In our American culture today, we're so focused on making sure everybody thinks that we look great. They want to, or we want them to have confidence in us. We want them to think that everything's going well, almost to the point we're never tempted. And so in this brief synopsis or summary of the sermon this morning, I want us to recognize how important it is to be poor in spirit. Today is the first in the series on the Beatitudes. And the very first one we find is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And really, if you go a little further into the book of Matthew, I think chapter 23, there are at least 8 woes pronounced on the scribes and Pharisees. And why was that? Because they were proud. Because they wanted everything to just look right. It didn't matter what was on the inside. It didn't matter how deteriorated they'd become in their own souls. What mattered is what they looked like. And so today I want us to think about the importance of humility when we come before God. Right now we're just on the verge of camp meeting. And sometimes it might be that God begins putting his finger on something, even in camp meeting, and we have to recognize that it's not what I look like to the people around me. What matters is what's real on the inside. And as long as we begin thinking that we can somehow just keep bluffing our way or just keep up a facade of some sort, we are not able to have victory. And God resists the proud, but he revives the humble. And I really want us to think about that. Of course, we focused on that in a longer message, but for these few moments together, I want you to just get the simple fact that we find in the Scripture. 2 more that I'll give to you besides Matthew 5 is, first of all, in 1 Peter 5, and I want to share a verse or so with you right there. And that would be, let me get the right one here, verse number 6. "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time." And then the previous book, James, and chapter 4, verse number 6. "But he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble." And so today I want us to think about the importance of humility when we come before God. Many, many times it may seem like we are going to advance, at least we think we'll advance, maybe not spiritually, but at least in a spiritual environment, we increase by looking like everything is good. But what we really increase in is by confronting anything that is wrong and letting God or allowing God to speak to us and make us good. And so today, I know that's a very brief summary, but I want us to think about how urgent it is for us to humble ourselves in the sight of God. Allow God to work in us that what used to be deteriorating, rusting away, so to speak, in our spiritual lives actually finds new life. He can restore. In the case of the Queen Mary, they simply removed the old ones and put replicas in. Well, God would like to restore the old and give us a fresh touch from heaven. We don't have to try to somehow bluff our way to heaven. And because obviously we can't bluff God. We don't just have to bluff our way, but we can have the real, the genuine, something that's really worth celebrating in our own souls if we'll humble ourselves before God and then let Him exalt us in due time. And so today, let God do the examination in your heart. Sometimes that's hard. We don't like to admit a need. We don't like to say, yes, that's me. God spoke to me about something. And really, I know the devil tries to fight us that way. He likes for us to be too proud to get help. But in reality, many, many times, if we'll simply seek after God, that's the best way to establish a proper respect among others. They'll see we mean business. Not that we live for that, but it is a part of it. And the devil would like to make us think that somehow nobody's going to have any confidence in us and our life is just destroyed if we're honest about where we are. But really, that's the way to victory. And so Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who humble themselves. Blessed are those who don't have to be first and in the uppermost seats, as Jesus referred to, or those that just always are given the priority in our spiritual realm. Again, as Americans at least, and maybe even American Christians, we are so focused on keeping a good show. But God is focused especially on making sure that we are right in our spirit, making sure that we are real and genuine. And so today, in this brief summary, you could listen to it for a half hour, I guess, if you come to service. But in this brief summary, then I hope that you'll take it to heart. Lord, help me to be humble. Help me to be lowly before you and allow you to pinpoint areas in my life that have need. And so you ask God even today to search your heart and to help you to be humble enough to respond when He speaks.